Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Kalen's Lens. I am here today joined by Taylor, who is currently a first year law student at City, Uni of London. And today's episode is an introduction to who is Taylor, where's he come from, and just a little bit of a background intro as to who Taylor actually is. Before we jump into this episode, I wanted to start before university, before ambition, before you sort of figured out that law was the career for you. I want to go back right to the start. When you're about 9 or 10 years old, who was that version of Taylor?
So when I was like 9 or 10, for me, I kind of wanted to become an actor. That was like my original kind of goal for it. So I remember at that age, I was like, of course, did the school plays, which were probably something I've seen videos of me doing before. I don't want to see them ever again. And yeah, I then in secondary, I did drama, loved it. But I guess, I mean, something we'll discuss later, but further down the line, I kind of realized that it wasn't really for me, but I loved being like outgoing. I love speaking. I also love becoming characters that like I couldn't be myself. For some reason, I always liked being kind of almost like dark, evil characters when I was younger, which I don't think is a very, very good sign as things to come. But yeah, I'll say it was probably like I was kind of just a small, ambitious kid that just like liked acting.
One goes through that phase though. Like everyone wants to become an actor. I remember back growing up, I wanted to be exactly the same. I wanted to be an actor. I was part of this like thing called Spotlight back in like my primary school, and it was like the performing arts thing. It was like I had to be the lead. I then went to like theatre school in like year 7 to year 9. And I just looked back and I'm like, my parents were paying £1,000 for a kid that would not make it to Broadway. I'm like, this is not the vibe. This is genuinely just not it. And so then quit and was like the best decision I ever made because it was like COVID came around. It was like I could not do
Mhm.
that anymore. But with that whole sort of like acting phase, do you think that you were more either introverted or extroverted growing up?
I think that I was very extrovert as a child. My mum always made sure that I was doing clubs. I was always engaging. If I like didn't put my hand up in class, like my teachers used to think that I was just weird and that something was wrong for it. So I always felt like I was extroverted. But when COVID hit, I do feel like that really changed everything. I just remember kind of basically being a potato in my room and just playing Spider-Man for 2 years straight. So when I left, when COVID ended and I was in year 10, I just remember almost not having any social skills. And I feel like even now, I don't think I've reached that level of extrovert that I used to be. So like whenever I go to like an event or go to a firm or even in groups, I'm still worried to sometimes speak, which is something that my previous self would have had absolutely like no issue doing. So I feel like I've kind of gone through like phases, but that main introverted phase was because of COVID.
COVID has that effect for everyone. I remember like looking back with COVID and it was the whole you can't meet up with anyone. The only form of communication you had was literally on your Xbox or your PlayStation. And I feel like playing video games is the only like sort of outlet that people had, apart from like, yes, you had studies if you wanted to do them or not, or literally that is the only way to communicate. And I feel like because there was no physical interaction, people really lost the meaning of how to actually communicate and how to actually be normal, so to speak, in terms of what to say to someone in person, how to be as an individual. And that really has like changed society, which I also feel like is why potentially I get like society wants to work from home because they just don't want to interact with people anymore. And it's like the whole change now is that yes, people are trying to get more back into the office to regain that sort of like extrovertism. But without that change and COVID happening, I feel like society would be completely different to the way it is now. And you know, for yourself as well, do you feel like you were your complete and truthful self growing up, like you were able to be your most authentic? Or did you feel like maybe that might have been restricted because of A, the environment or B, the schools?
I think that I was a close like version to my true self, but I feel like I was almost too extroverted. I didn't really get social cues or anything like that, and like I didn't know when to shut up basically. So I think that that kind of being able to be really passionate and express myself is something that I that is my true self, but I feel like that was almost a massive overextension of it. So I feel like now I'm more closer to my true self, which is kind of in between being introverted and extroverted.
And do you feel happier, sort of, so to speak, that you are now in that sort of like blend between introverted and extroverted? Like, do you feel like that is now you being the true version of yourself that you can be in the situation?
I would say that now I'm able to like talk to strangers more and talk to my friends better whilst not being just completely overextended and just dominating a conversation. I feel like that is something that is better and it's a better reflection of me now. And I feel like that has made me happier. As I used to, when I was younger, I used to be, whenever somebody would get annoyed at me for speaking, I was always like, why is that the case? Like, I just want to talk. And if I want to talk, I'll do it. But now I'm able to understand why that caused like so much frustration. So it makes me not as self conscious in a weird kind of roundabout way. Like, I don't feel as worried when I speak because I know that people will either want to hear me or I just haven't spoken enough.
If you had like any advice for someone who's sort of probably struggling right now of being too extroverted, but also not being way too introverted and kind of struggling to figure out how to be their true authentic self when they're facing those voices from other people who are like, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't be like that. What would that advice be?
I would say kind of the way I worked around it was I would always ask my friends like, am I doing too much or am I speaking too much or like have I not spoken enough? And that's kind of a good way to find out your boundaries. I feel like it's best to test it on your friends. And then when it comes to a more professional setting or meeting strangers, I feel like one of the best ways to do it is to not speak as much and force yourself to not speak as much, which is very hard. But then being able to read the room and figure out when to speak and when the conversation's dying, maybe then interject. So being able to fully read the room and understand your place within that room is also really important. I think that's kind of the best way to get around it. I know I kind of got around that in a more like environmental way, but that's kind of how I would go about it now.
It's so true though, because speaking about reading the room, I feel like it's such a skill and it takes time to figure out and learn everyone's different sort of traits, how people interact, but then how people give their own social cues, because not everybody has the sort of same social cue to interact with or follow the same way. And so without reading the rooms, like you just aren't going to be able to figure that out. You're just not gonna be able to understand how to grow, how to understand what people are wanting from you in that space and that conversation, but also ensuring that you're not doing too much. But do you actually really think like, there's a place or there's a position where people could say, "Oh, you're doing too much," but it might be because they are just judgmental people?
I think that's definitely something. I think that does happen. I think it's like quite rare though. And if they are saying that because of it, normally you can tell from their other cues, like from just how they're looking at you to if they're trying to move the conversation away from you. I think there are other ways to be able to determine if somebody is doing it out of jealousy. And if they are, as long as everybody else is happy with you talking, I think that's a them problem, not a you problem, to be honest. But if of course everybody is looking at you like you should shut up, then that's probably what you should do almost. But I think that jealousy and that kind of thing, when it comes to being extroverted in that way, I feel like it's also a kind of representation of their own insecurity and their own lack of self expression as well. I don't think that a lot of the time it's an issue of yours as well.
It's so true to say, like you've just said, in terms of it's their own jealousy. It really
Hmm.
is, because I feel like we live in a world now where social media really puts on this like critical lens of everyone's lives. Like, you've got to have the certain body, you've got to look a certain way, you've got to have the certain features, you've got to act this certain way and be a certain individual. And it puts all this societal expectations on an individual as to how you should act, how you should be in a room, how you should be in a situation. When the reality is we kind of lose that sort of openness and honestness, but also that ability to just be your true authentic self. And so it's
Hmm.
without question, like people just need to stop being judgmental. People just genuinely need to like forget about it. But also I think it takes courage as that individual that might be facing that judgment is to grow deeper. Start with yourself, understand who you are as an individual to the core, what your traits are, what you bring to the table and when you see that value, those voices begin to sort of dissipate and disappear. And I wanted to sort of move on and talk about success. And I feel like growing up, obviously, you wanted to become an actor, you wanted to go probably to Hollywood or West End in that sort of direction. What was that meaning of that word success at that point? Was it Hollywood or was it just
Think
something
that back
completely different?
then, success, there was almost kind of two strands to it. There was the success that I was kind of always taught, which is just you need to get good grades, go to a good uni, get a good job. And of course, acting is a good job if you're able to break into it. So I had that kind of view of success from when I was younger, but I feel like a lot of my kind of reasoning for wanting to go into acting and the success around it was just everybody else saying, "Oh, you have done very well. You're a very good actor." I feel like it was almost it was an external form of success that I was looking at, which I guess is one of the reasons why kind of realized acting wasn't for me was that I always almost felt like I was kind of doing it because I liked everybody's reaction to me and not because I liked it for myself.
It I feel like with that, it's so true because it's just like the fact is without it, without having that in-person reflection, and you're actually doing it for other people and you're not actually doing it
Mhm,
to yourself, actually then allows you to really understand what success is and what that
mhm.
success will then look like over the next few years for yourself. And I think without having that self-belief and that passion, but also I feel like it takes courage to tell people, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to continue this path. I want to go down a different path. You might dislike that decision, but it's my decision and it's nobody else's decision. And I think with that, obviously, you've spoken about the pressure or the standard, so to speak, of get a good grades, go to uni, get a good job, retire. Like that is the sort of modern day societal life pattern. In your particular house, though, like what was success? Like, was it put onto you by your parents or was it put onto you by other
I
people, that
think
sort
that,
of added
like, I was
pressure?
lucky enough that my family, they didn't really care what I would do in the future as long as I was happy. I think that but to get to that level, you need to have good grades and go to a good uni at the least, as that then means that you can kind of go into whatever field you kind of want, especially with good grades at GCSEs, because of course that leads to good success at A levels as well. So I feel like it was almost like my parents were very good at saying it like that so that I would have options and opportunities in the future for it. But I did feel like a lot of that kind of pressure for it was mainly built through school. Like through my friends, a lot of them did expect like good grades. They thought that, here's this very smart kid who should do well. So let's make him do as good as he can, basically push me to the edge. And also, like my teachers as well, they were like, well, if you want to do really well in the future, you need to get like straight nines or straight eights, and anything else below that is basically failure. And what's the point in you even being here? So I feel like a lot of it is kind of more school and more the students at school than my like family.
But it really is like the truth though, like when you're growing up in GCSEs, you have all this added pressure from your friendships because it's like they see the potential in you before you see the potential in yourself. But it's like that pressure begins to weigh on you. It kind of acts as like you're put on a higher pedestal than everybody else with all these other added expectations that you never asked for. Like you come from exactly the same position that everyone else was in. And I remember from my childhood as well, like I did have better grades than a lot of my other peers, so to speak. And it isn't to say it in a sort of big-headed way. It was just the
Hmm.
truth that my grades were higher. And then everyone puts that added pressure on you of like, you need to achieve an 8 or you need to achieve a 9 in this and a 9 in that. And I'm like, why would I not be just good enough for you to achieve a 7? I just want a 7. I don't want an 8 or a 9. I just want a 7. Like, why is that not good enough for absolutely anyone? Pressure, like, genuinely seeps into you that I feel like it can lead to a burnout at such a young age at GCSEs as well. And then you try and have to compete with that at A levels and then keep up with that same standard. It genuinely puts a toll on the individual and having all that pressure. So if you had any advice to anyone right now that was feeling like they've got all this pressure being put on them by everybody else, not their family, but everyone else around them. How would you advise them?
I feel like it's a very common advice is to just remember that you dictate your own life and that even if they, yes, they may believe you are capable of getting a higher grade. If all you need is a seven, like you said, if all you need is a seven and you're happy with getting a seven, then aim for the seven. If you want to push yourself further, do it of your own accord. Don't do it because someone else has told you to, as it genuinely it does lead to burnout. I remember, and I feel like that's also like amplified by the fact that even during GCSEs and when you're starting to choose your A levels, it's always just what career do you want to go into? What like service do you want to do? Biology? Do you want to like become a scientist? There's always that added pressure of almost feeling like you need to have your life planned out it, so early, really. So I feel like make sure whenever you're doing something, just ask yourself, am I doing this for my own benefit or am I doing this because everybody else has said that it's important and that I should be doing it?
Am I doing this for my own benefit or am I doing it for anybody else? That, for anyone that's listening, take that away because genuinely take that into account. Even right now, if you're currently at uni, you're currently doing your A levels, like take it into account because at the end of the day, you have to do it for yourself. And it's so crazy as well when you think about it. Like, society expects you at 16 to 18 to have your entire life figured out with no bumps in the road, nothing going on. It's like, expects you to know what field, know what job you're going to get, know where you're going to end up. And the truth is that is not how society goes at present. That is just not what happens. And there are so many other hurdles that get thrown in the way. I remember literally, I was like year nine, I wanted to become a human rights lawyer. And now it's like, no, couldn't think of anything far away from that. And now it's commercial law and going into the corporate world. And for me, I'm like, great, then nobody tells you how hard it is to get into that physical world coming from the background that you do. And so it's like, just take a moment, guys, breathe, because at the end of the day, it's not that simple that everybody makes it out that it's easy to do or easy to get into that career. Same in finance or same in science. It genuinely just doesn't work that way. But one thing I also wanted to touch upon is sort of like beliefs. And I feel like it's been such a topic that we've just spoken about is the beliefs that you have on yourself, but then the beliefs from everybody else. So one thing I wanted to know is, have there been any sort of beliefs that have stayed with you?
One of importance, which was if I want to be successful, I have to earn that success. I know there's some people that will get into fields because they know people, and that's fine if they get in that way. At the end of the day, I can't control that, but I am able to control my own destiny. So, of course, similar to you, I want to go into commercial law. And I know that if I work hard enough and I'm smart about how I apply and I do all the things that I should do to get in, eventually I will get into a place. And it doesn't even have to be in the very traditional application-y way. There's so many people that come from very varied backgrounds across every field I feel like I've spoken to. So even if it doesn't come from the normal way, that's fine as long as they end up in a place that I want to be in. So almost striving for success and then success will come to you, I guess, is kind of like the main belief I've had growing up.
And has that belief that you've had been helpful for you right now?
Helps me a lot now, but I think it harmed me for a decent period of time, especially when I was applying to, especially at the beginning of first year, actually. Whenever I was like applying to firms, I would almost overcomplicate what I needed to talk about and what I needed to know and research to the point where in my applications, I was talking about really niche things that no one really needs to know instead of just talking about the obvious and stating what a firm actually wants to see. So I think that that almost overdrive for success and doing too much for what I actually need did harm me. So it's kind of now it's almost managing those expectations of what does a first year need to know, what does a second year need to know, and a third year. So having those clear boundaries of what I need to know and apply, and then if I go beyond that in my research, being able to say, well, this can be saved like banked for second year, for example.
I totally agree with the strategy because it's like everyone's at a different point in their careers. Everyone is at a different place of where they want to see their life going, where they want to see what direction. And even for yourself, it's very clear that you've created a strategy in your mind that works for you and accommodates for you in order to achieve that view of what you believe to be successful, all going back to the original beliefs that you had and that they laid the foundations for you to start with. So, if you did have any advice to anyone on how to start with yourself,
Almost look in the mirror and figure out what do I want to achieve in your life, but even if you can't think that far ahead, what do you want to achieve in 2 years? And then from that, build a step by step program of what the stages are. For example, if it's an exam, you may think, I want to get A star, for example, in this exam. What are the steps needed? Well, I'll need to learn these 3 topics. I'll need to revise these, may need to develop my analytical skills, for example. So having those clear set guidelines as to what you want to achieve and then how to achieve them, I think is the best step for it. I also feel like a little bit of confidence is very important. I think that sometimes we're a bit too, I feel like as a society, we're almost a bit hesitant to say we will get there and that we will do it. So having that small amount of confidence of just saying, I can get there if I try and if I do everything I've set out to do. Having that clear guidelines and that clear confidence in your mind, I think is really important for achieving any dream that anybody can really have.
you're so right. Because even if I look at my own life and the way that I've now adopted, especially into second year, because I look back on first year and honestly, that was just a big joke to me. I went into that year with no plan, no actionable thing. This year, though, because I spent the summer working on myself and like doing a whole sort of like starting with myself, reframework of my mind and what I actually wanted to achieve, I'm creating tangible steps, like breaking down a specific goal that I had and making sure that I achieve that goal every single week. For me, that was like, I want to wake up at 4:30 every day. Okay, how am I going to break that down to achieve that one goal? How am I going to break it down and then add and habit stack to that? Because I think that's key is habit stacking. Once you have that habit and once you get into that good rhythm of doing something, it's then building upon that. And once you've built upon that, then you actually are able to achieve that goal. Because without having the habits, without having the good things alongside that and having the good confidence with that, you won't actually achieve the goal without stacking it every single time. And like you said, it all comes back to having confidence within yourself, confidence within you as an individual, what you are set it out to achieve and how you set out to achieve it. Because if you're not confident in yourself, no one else is going to be confident within you. So if you had like anything sort of going on in your life, guys, genuinely take that advice. Take it, break it down into tangible things that you can implement within your routine. And if you need to, you might have to make some changes, and that should be fine. Because if it's a goal you actually want to achieve, you will then make the change to achieve it. It's as simple as that. And when that happens and you see the results, your confidence will genuinely grow. And so, from this step and the steps that you've had, what have you like done in terms of once you break it down, once you understand what goal you actually have, Taylor?
What I do is I always obviously begin the actual process of it. And you'll soon realize that no matter what you've wrote down, eventually it will not fall into what it said it was on paper. There'll always be some kind of detour or there'll be some kind of event that will happen. And that's completely fine. I think the first step of that is just acknowledging that, things happen and that's fine. From it, I always then try and find almost kind of redirect what I'm doing and maybe adding extra stages to it. And then from it, if I don't hit some of them, and that's fine. It's always going back and reflecting on it. Why did I not do it correctly, or why did I skip it? That kind of thing. Having that transparency of being able to say, I didn't do this today, or I haven't done this just yet. That's fine. I will do it at some point, or I'll do it tomorrow. Being able to reflect and say, yeah, I should have done that, but I didn't. And having that truthfulness and then working on it, I think is like key to developing good habits.
So, with all these tangible steps that you've learned, especially in your first year and doing so many things that you have, do you feel like you were like this before university?
I wanted to achieve in first years, which was the main key areas was that I wanted to break into commercial law, do a bunch of events and kind of familiarize myself within it. Another thing kind of linked to it, but still separate to it, was that I wanted to just make more friends and engage with it. I live in London. I should be able to enjoy the big city and the like the massive life here that you can have here. So I feel like I kind of had those thoughts in my head, but I was almost waiting to then apply them in first year. So when I got here, I wanted to make friends. I was very lucky that at one point I walked into our common area and there was people there and I spoke to them and we've been friends ever since for it. So I think that I wasn't really like this beforehand, but a part of being really excited for uni was the fact that I would be able to explore it, which meant that when I finally got here, I was able to almost like dive headfirst into it, which definitely helped, especially with making friends and also with law firms and commercial law as well, having that like deep passion for it and wanting to do more for it.
You grow in so many different ways because you're no longer surrounded by the people that you're familiar with, people that you've been potentially because you just went to the same school as them, potentially grew up in the same area. And it's like now you're able to be your true, authentic self without that added pressure, without those expectations that being set on you back in A levels and GCSEs from everybody else to achieve the grades that you want to achieve. And it's like what expectations you set now are on you because you're in it and you're doing it alone. There isn't potentially family members around you. You're not being told you have to do this or you have to live your life a certain way. And you kind of give yourself that flexibility, especially in London. I feel like London is the best place for it. London has so much things, and I feel like the only thing that I've noticed is expensive is rent. Everything else, I don't pay bills because it's all included. But like, if I did, might be saying something otherwise. But genuinely, like, there's so many opportunities, so many places, things that are even free for anyone to do. And it's like you grow in so many different ways when you leave home. But do you think there has been any sort of moment that you were afraid that you weren't going to meet the expectations that you put on yourself when you
I
began?
guess it was at the end of the first term. So by the end of the first term, basically all I had was straight rejections from firms. And my original friend group that I had from law basically completely fell apart. And so
Uh,
I kind of ended the first term with having one really close friend that I'm still like best friends with now and no firms. And I left to go back home for Christmas and I was like, what do I even do here? That was kind of one moment where I felt kind of like low, I guess, because of it. But I think that everybody will have moments like that at uni. I don't think I'm alone by any reason for it. So I think that what separates people is who is able to kind of bounce back from it and create an actual proper strategy, going back to that, like a proper strategy as to how they will achieve what they wanted to achieve, even though there has been an issue. Being able to create that almost divergent kind of thing for it, I guess, is kind of the best way to get around it.
I couldn't have said it so much simpler. I genuinely couldn't have thought of any other way to say it simpler. It's genuinely is because it's like everyone goes through shit. Like everyone goes through something going wrong in their life, something falling apart, whether that be friendships or relationships. It's like everyone's trying to figure that out. Like, how do we navigate that in a new situation? In a new town, in a new city where we don't know anyone. And it's like how you grow out from that becomes who you are as an individual. It really shows you as an individual, like you are capable of going through a hard time, you're capable of going through the tough moments in life, so to speak. And without those moments happening, you are not going to succeed in anything else because it's like you have to go through the dark times to come out to the good times.
Mm.
Without the dark times, there's gonna be like, it's like nothing smooth sailing. So when you're going through those times, it's really like taking that reflection and being like, what did I do wrong? But then also, how can I then better myself to achieve so much more? So do you think with yourself, like because of that moment, because of those couple of days or that period within your life, that you are glad that those moments happened?
100%. I think that it's something that I've seen of people who are now trainees and even people in different fields. If you ask any one of them if in their university life, and even in their commercial life or professional life, every single one of them will say that they had a challenge or they had something go wrong, but that ended up fueling that change, which therefore made them great. I think that for me, having that moment where I kind of like, I remember I was like sat on my bed and I was just like, have I even accomplished anything in this first term? And a part of me was like, I haven't, but also another side to me was like, I have. I've been able to go out and speak to people. I've made an effort. There's just something, there's a slight issue somewhere. And that whole time, it was basically me just trying to figure out what that issue was, which I ended up figuring out for law firms. And then for friendships, I feel like it's a little bit of a harder thing. But I kind of realized that I guess maybe those people weren't my people. And in the next term, instead of trying to repair what is already broken, really, I should instead try to reach out again and speak to more people. Because at the end of the day, especially in London as well, every single like corner, there'll be probably like 30 people that you've never seen before and that you've never spoken to. So there's always somebody else to speak to. So I feel like for me, one of the main things I wanted to do this term was to develop that, firstly, that professional network, but also from that, almost convert that professional network into actual proper friendships.
It really hits home because it's like I can see it, I can feel the energy because it's like you went through a difficult time and now you're in a place that's a lot more happier, at peace, a lot more relaxed as well, that you were able to make these professional relationships. You were able to translate some of them into friendships. You were able to translate other relationships outside of the field into friendships and become less so acquaintances and more deep rooted. And I think everyone goes through that. I can even speak for myself. It's like I went through first year and that was the worst year of my life. I remember the second part of it, I look back and I was like, if I could change anything, I wouldn't because everything had to happen for me to have the circle that I have now, the close people that I have in my life. Like, there's so many people that I would never have thought of I could be friends with. Like, my best friend today at uni is literally my flatmate who I lived next door to last year. And it's so crazy because we were like, we hardly ever spoke last year. We didn't really communicate. And then in the summer, I don't know what happened, but we grew so much closer. And now it's like I will literally speak to her more than I speak to my parents at this point, which is crazy. But it's like she's genuinely like my big sister that I never had. And so it's crazy how like times change, especially when you go through such a hard point. And the final thing that I wanted to touch upon in the first part, really, Taylor, is just to ask you like, looking back from that 9-year-old version of yourself to where you are now and the things that you have achieved, do you feel like you understood who you were back then and you understood why you were so extroverted and why that change from extrovertism to introvertism happened?
So it's a hard one. I think that looking back on my old self, I kind of understand it. I was just very curious, very ambitious, but I feel like the way I was conveying it just wasn't kind of in the correct format as everybody around me was very vocal to tell me. So now I'm older and can look back on everything that's happened in my life over these past 10 years. That makes me feel old. Over these past like 10 years, I'm able to kind of see all of the times where I had done something wrong or something wasn't right and was able to, even if I didn't know it at the time or didn't mean it, I was able to kind of create my own path around it. I think that's something that is something I'm only just starting to almost visualize now.
Creating your own path. That has just genuinely been the message throughout the entire first part because it's like everyone's path changes, but you're creating something as you go along. You're creating
Mhm.
those memories, you're creating those moments, and it really is sort of like a history part because at the end of the day, everyone's history in your own lives. Everyone's figuring out how to live, how to be as an individual. And like for yourself, eating your own path. I just want the listeners to sit with that for a second because when you look at the path that you're creating, genuinely, when you look at the path that you're creating, you are creating something. You may not see what you're creating right now, but you just know that you're going to create something that's going to have such a big impact. So, thank you, Taylor. Thank you for those insights into who you are, where life has taken you at this moment, and what it's actually took to get to the place that you are in now. And so, thank you for everything that you shared. And I can't wait to join back next week. So, listeners, make sure to keep an eye out for part two with Taylor, where we will be deep diving into everything university, pressure, ambition, future, identity, so much more. So make sure to stay tuned for part two with Taylor.